One of my sabbaticals involved living in Europe for a year, and I taught for Boston University's MBA program, overseas program, and I spent 4 months in Berlin, 4 months in Vicenza, Italy, and 4 months in Mons, Belgium. And while I was in Italy, in Vicenza, which is halfway between Venezia, Venice, and Verona, I got interested in the Romeo and Juliet story, which of course took place in Verona. And I was wondering if there was any actual happening in Verona that could have led to this story, and because it's never really said. Now, Shakespeare got his story indirectly through an English author named Painter, who reported on a story of a French list of stories, who borrowed their stories from various Italian stories. And the original story of Romeo and Juliet was written by Luigi di Porto in Italy around 1524, something like that. And so anyhow, I went to the Biblioteca, the library in Verona, and there was a very nice young lady there, librarian, who took an interest in what I was wanting to do. I was wanting to see if there were any mentions in the old manuscripts about a family feud that might have impressed Luigi di Porto to write his story of Romeo and Juliet. And I found some obscure thing about two families, the Monticchios, who might have been the Montagues, and the Counts of San Bonifacio, who were the leading families in Verona back in the 13th and 14th century. And one of the Monticchios married one of the San Bonifacio young persons and killed one of the counts of San Bonifacio, and he got exiled, and that was the end of it. But you know, from finer threads than that, great literature has been written. So anyhow, I asked her if the Monticchios or the San Bonifacios were still around. She said no, the San Bonifacios had driven the Monticchios out of Italy 300 or 400 years previous, but this Count of San Bonifacio was on the board of directors of the Biblioteca. And I said, would he talk to me? She says, oh yeah, he speaks fluent English. And she said, you want to talk to him? No, I'll call him. So she called him on the phone, and I told him about this obscure reference I'd found about his relative, Soricio was his name, that was the killer. And he said he wasn't aware of this, but that he was the repositor of all the ancient writings of the San Bonifacio family, and he'd like to meet me and talk with me. So I made an arrangement to meet with him the next day in his villa in downtown Padua, as they call it. And when I entered the place, there was this landing ahead of me on the staircase. It was a circular staircase, had a landing, and on the wall in the landing was the big tapestry of the family tree of the San Bonifacios, and that there at the very top right was Soricio, and he had never noticed that before. So that got us off on the right foot. So then he said, we need to go to my villa in the country, and so we went to his villa. He had a Mercedes, and I had a little VW Rabbit, and he had a lead foot, and we were going around winding curves, and he had to stop about every mile to let me catch up to him. I accused him of him being related to Mario Andrade, which he understood. anyhow, when we got there, he introduced me to his wife, who was Countess Alighieri, a direct descendant of Dante. She was one of the most gracious persons you'd ever want to meet, and she had made some sandwiches for us, and we had a nice little chat, and then we went to his library, and in the meantime before we got there, he'd called his daughter down from Milano, who was interested in the family tree, and she came, and we went through the manuscripts that he had there, and we found the same reference. And so it was an interesting experience, and it was noblesse oblige. I mean, they were just delightful people, and they treated me just like one of the boys, you know. I was totally impressed, old country boy that I am.